The morning light hit differently that day, gold spilling across the kitchen counter, warming the chipped mug I'd been nursing for an hour. My laptop screen glowed back at me, a blank inbox taunting me with silence. I had been waiting for that email, the one that could change everything. The job at Wincrest Marketing, my dream company, the one I'd worked 2 years of late shifts and online certifications to even qualify for. I'd sent my application 3 weeks ago, and my sister Chloe promised she'd hand-deliver my offer paperwork since she knew someone in HR. That was 5 days ago. Now it was Tuesday morning, and my coffee had gone cold twice. My niece, Hazel, sat on the floor coloring, her tiny fingers gripping a purple crayon as she hummed softly. "Auntie Emma," she said, not looking up, "when you get a new job, can we buy a puppy?" I smiled, that kind of soft smile adults wear when they want to protect a child's hope. "Maybe," I said, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "Maybe if they pay me enough to feed a puppy and myself." She giggled. The sound filled the kitchen, innocent and bright. But as I refreshed my inbox again, the brightness dimmed. No email. No call. No congratulations, Emma. My stomach fluttered with that faint, familiar anxiety, the kind that hides behind optimism. Maybe it's delayed. Maybe they're still deciding. Chloe hadn't replied to my last text, either. She'd been quiet all weekend, only posting photos of brunches and new shoes on her social media story. No mention of me. No mention of the job. I stared at the muffins I'd baked early that morning. Blueberry, her favorite. I'd made them thinking maybe she'd drop by. Maybe we'd celebrate. Now they sat there untouched, cooling into silence. I picked one up, broke it in half, and watched a piece crumble onto the counter. The smell of blueberries mixed with the faint bitterness of burnt sugar, sweet, but wrong somehow. The phone buzzed. "Chloe. Can't talk, super busy. We'll call later." That was it. No emojis, no warmth. Just the digital equivalent of a closed door. I typed back, "Did you hear anything from Wincrest?" The 3 dots appeared, then vanished. I stared for a long time at the gray screen, then locked my phone. Outside, the afternoon sun dimmed behind a slow-moving cloud. Hazel's crayons rolled across the floor. One dropped near my feet, a broken purple stub, flattened from use. "Oops," she said softly. I bent down, picked it up, and placed it back in her box. "It's okay, honey." But my hands trembled a little, not from anger, from something deeper. That quiet premonition that the world is tilting, and you're pretending it's still straight. By evening, the sky turned violet. I made dinner, washed dishes, scrolled through job boards I'd already memorized. When I finally crawled into bed, I opened my email one more time. Empty. And just before my eyes closed, I thought about how Chloe once said, "If I ever get you into Wincrest, you'll owe me forever." At the time, it had sounded like a joke. Now, it echoed like a warning. I didn't know it yet, but my dream job had already found me, addressed to my name, and never reached my hands. Because my sister had kept the envelope that would have changed my life. And she never planned to tell me. 2 days later, I decided to stop waiting. I grabbed my coat, packed Hazel's crayons into her little backpack, and drove across town to Chloe's house. The sky was gray, that indecisive kind of weather where it looks like it might rain but never does. My windshield wipers squeaked against the dry glass as I parked in front of her driveway. Her car was there. Her music was loud. And yet, when I rang the bell, it took her almost a full minute to open the door. She smiled, that perfectly rehearsed smile of hers that never reached her eyes. "Emma, wow, surprise visit." I held up the coffee I'd brought. "I figured we could catch up. Maybe talk about the job." Her lips pressed into a polite curve.
"Oh, that."
"Yeah, I didn't hear back, sorry. They must have gone with someone else. These things happen." She said it like she was reading weather updates, casual, empty, practiced. I felt my throat tighten. "Are you sure? You said you knew someone in HR." "Emma, please." She laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "You can't take these things personally. I told you not to get your hopes too high." Her tone wasn't cruel, just condescending enough to sting. I looked past her shoulder into her kitchen. Fresh flowers on the counter. A bottle of champagne chilling in the fridge. And something about the scene felt too celebratory for a nothing-happened day. Hazel tugged my sleeve. "Can I go play with Milo?" she asked, referring to Chloe's son. "Sure, sweetheart," I said softly. She ran off inside, leaving me standing by the door. Chloe crossed her arms. "You're being weird. Come on in or go home. I have a lot on my plate today." I stepped in. The house smelled of vanilla candles and success, the kind that doesn't belong to someone struggling. We sat for a few minutes, her scrolling through her phone, me pretending to sip the lukewarm coffee. The silence stretched. Finally, I asked, "Did they send any mail to your address? Just in case they mix things up?" Her head snapped up, irritation flashing across her face. "Why would they send your mail to my address?" "You offered to deliver my paperwork," I reminded her gently. "Maybe." "Emma, drop it." Her voice hardened. "You're making this awkward." That word, awkward, carried more venom than yelling ever could. So I smiled, that brittle, careful smile women learn to use instead of breaking down. "You're right. I'm just tired." She looked relieved, like she'd won something invisible.
Good.
"You'll find something else." When I left, the sky finally broke into rain, soft, steady, unrelenting. I walked Hazel back to the car, her little hand clutching mine as puddles splashed beneath our shoes. "Did Annie Chloe make you sad?" she asked innocently. I forced a laugh. "No, honey. Just grown-up stuff." But the tears burned anyway. I rolled down the window halfway, letting the rain air out the suffocating silence. When we got home, my neighbor Mrs. Callahan waved from her porch. "You all right, dear? You look pale." I tried to smile. "Just a rough week." She handed me a covered dish. Chicken pot pie. Comfort food fixes most things, even the ones that shouldn't need fixing. Her kindness cracked something inside me. I thanked her, went inside, and served Hazel dinner. After she went to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The muffins I'd baked earlier still sat in their tray, now hard and dry. I broke one apart and stared at the crumbs. My phone buzzed again. A message from Chloe. "Chloe, you're overreacting, Emma. Stop acting like I owe you anything." No greeting. No kindness. Just that. I locked the phone and set it face down. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet pavement and endings. And as I looked at the half-empty plate on the counter, I realized something cruelly simple. The people who tell you to stop overreacting are usually the ones who cause the reaction in the first place. I went to bed that night, eyes dry but heart heavy, wondering how long I'd been mistaking loyalty for love. I used to believe Chloe and I were close, sisters by blood, best friends by choice. Growing up, she was the loud one, the charming one, the kind who could convince a teacher she'd turned in her homework even when she hadn't written a single word. I was the quiet one, the responsible sister, the one who picked up the pieces she left behind. Mom used to say it all the time. "Emma, you're older. You have to set an example. Be patient with Chloe. She's sensitive." Sensitive. That word became a shield for every selfish thing she ever did. When we were kids, she'd borrow my clothes without asking, spill juice on them, and say, "Relax, it's just fabric." In college, she maxed out our shared credit card buying makeup and a concert ticket. When the bill came, she cried until I agreed to pay it off. "You're better with money," she'd said, hugging me like it was a compliment. By the time we hit our 20s, the pattern wasn't just habit, it was our family language. I worked 2 part-time jobs, saving for a marketing certification. She worked between things, floating from one opportunity to the next, always landing on her feet because someone, usually me, was her cushion. Once, I lent her $1,200 to help with rent. She spent it on a trip to Miami. When I confronted her, she said, "You wouldn't understand. I needed to clear my head." And I believed her. Because that's what guilt-trained people do. They justify betrayal in prettier words. When our mom passed 3 years ago, things got worse. I handled the funeral bills, the estate, the debts, everything. Chloe showed up in sunglasses, whispered, "You're amazing for doing all this," and left early to rest. I told myself she was grieving differently. That's the thing about emotional manipulation. It doesn't start with knives. It starts with excuses. Last year, she convinced me to move closer to her so Hazel can have family nearby. I left my small but stable job at a local firm in Ohio and came here to Massachusetts. I thought we'd support each other, maybe rebuild what we lost after Mom. She promised to help me network, said she had contacts at Windcrest Marketing. "Trust me," she'd said over dinner one night, swirling wine in her glass. "You'll land something fast. I'll even drop off your offer paperwork if they send it." And I had trusted her, because she was my sister. I remember the night I finished that application, sitting cross-legged on my apartment floor, typing every line with care, double-checking grammar, attaching my portfolio. I'd never been so proud of something so small. When I told Chloe, she'd smiled, almost strangely. "Wow, you really want this, huh?" "Of course I do," I'd laughed. "This could change everything." She leaned back, sipped her wine, and said quietly, "It must be nice to always know what you want." At the time, I thought it was a compliment. Now, I see the envy behind it. There were signs looking back. The times she'd subtly downplay my wins. "That's good for you, but don't overdo it." The way she'd steer conversations toward her frustrations. The guilt trips. The emotional tug-of-war. And yet, I stayed loyal. Because we were family. Then came the social media post, the one that shattered everything I thought I knew. 3 days after our awkward visit, I saw it. A photo of Chloe, smiling outside a tall glass building downtown. The caption, "New beginnings at the perfect place, excited for what's ahead." The geotag read Windcrest Marketing Headquarters. My heart stopped. I scrolled through the comments. "So proud of you. You deserve this. Hard work pays off." She hadn't even tried to hide it. I remember sitting on the couch, phone trembling in my hands, the sound of Hazel's cartoons blurring behind me. There it was, the offer that had my name on it, the dream I'd built alone, smiling back at me from my sister's profile. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just stared until the phone dimmed, until my reflection stared back at me in the black glass, tired, small, and foolishly loyal. People always say betrayal feels like being stabbed in the back. But for me, it wasn't a stab. It was a quiet suffocation. A slow, silent realization that love had been weaponized against me. That night, as the world slept, I opened my laptop and typed, "How to report stolen job documents." And though I didn't press send yet, that was the moment something inside me began to wake up. A week passed. The air in my apartment felt heavier, like grief without a funeral. I'd stopped checking my email, stopped waiting for calls that would never come. I spent my mornings making pancakes for Hazel and pretending not to care when Chloe's name flashed across the newsfeed again, tagged by coworkers celebrating her first week at Windcrest Marketing. She'd even posted a photo of her company badge. Her smile looked brighter than I'd ever seen it. I should have blocked her. I didn't. Instead, I scrolled, staring at the screen until the words blurred. Then, one night, everything changed. It was almost midnight when my phone buzzed. A new email. I blinked at the subject line. "Welcome to Windcrest Marketing, orientation schedule and HR contact." At first, I thought it was spam. Then I noticed the name. To Emma.Wilson@WindcrestCareers.com. CC. Chloe.Wilson@WindcrestCareers.com. My breath caught. I opened it. It was a group email from HR, meant for onboarding new hires. Attached were files, benefits forms, ID setup, parking permits, all addressed to Emma Wilson. The room seemed to tilt. My eyes darted down the thread, reading the previous messages. The first email, the offer letter, was sent to my old address, not my new one. Chloe must have forwarded it, pretending to handle it for me. And somewhere in between, she'd changed the contact details. My phone number, my email, my everything. A chill crept through me. I reread the timestamp. 3 weeks ago. The same day she'd told me she'd drop off my paperwork. The same day she'd gone silent. My stomach twisted. I couldn't breathe. My pulse raced so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. I clicked on the HR signature, Dana Harris, Human Resources Manager. Her number was right there. For 10 whole minutes, I stared at it, thumb hovering above the screen. I rehearsed what I'd say. "Hi, this is Emma Wilson. I think there's been a mistake." But my voice shook even in my head, because saying it out loud would make it real, that my own sister had stolen my identity for a job. I set the phone down, pacing the room. My chest ached, my hands trembling. Hazel stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about puppies. I stopped by her door, watching her small frame rise and fall under the blanket. How could I raise her around this kind of example? Around lies wrapped in smiles? I sat on the edge of my bed, grabbed my old notebook, and started scribbling everything I remembered: dates, texts, promises.
Proof.
It felt mechanical at first, then cathartic. I flipped through screenshots on my phone, the "I'll deliver it" text from Chloe, the "they didn't choose you" message. I saved them all in a new folder named Truth. The next morning, I woke up with that same buzzing in my chest, fear mixed with adrenaline. I opened my email, typed out a short message to HR. "Dear Ms. Harris, I recently discovered there might have been a mix-up regarding a job offer originally intended for me. Could we discuss this matter privately?" I reread it 3 times. No emotion, no blame, just facts. When I pressed send, my finger trembled, but my heart didn't. It was quiet after that. No immediate reply. Just the hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, the faint sound of Hazel singing to her toys. For the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. That night, Chloe called. Her name lit up my phone, glowing like a warning light. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail anyway. "Hey, I heard you've been asking around about Windcrest. You're making things awkward. Let's not ruin our relationship over nothing, okay?" Her voice was syrupy sweet, but underneath, it trembled just a little. That was when I knew. She was scared. And fear meant I finally had the truth and the leverage. I sat by the window, the night air cool on my face, city lights flickering below. My pulse steadied for the first time in weeks. "They'll never change," I whispered to myself. And somewhere inside me, the first spark of rebellion finally caught fire. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, but because of clarity. For months, I had let Chloe narrate my story for me. She'd painted me as the struggling single mom, the one who couldn't get her life together, the one she had to look out for. And the worst part? I'd believed her. But not anymore. At sunrise, I brewed coffee, packed Hazel's lunch, and dropped her off at kindergarten. On the drive back, I parked outside a quiet coffee shop, opened my laptop, and refreshed my inbox. There it was. From Dana Harris, HR Manager, Windcrest Marketing. Subject: Employment mix-up. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. "Hi, Emma. Thank you for reaching out. This does sound unusual. Could you confirm your mailing address and phone number so we can verify our records? Regards, Dana." I replied instantly, attaching copies of my driver's license and the screenshots of Chloe's messages. I hesitated, then added. The job offer was originally addressed to me, but my sister handled the paperwork and communication with your HR team. I have reason to believe she misrepresented her identity. I hit send. No more hiding. For the first time, my story wasn't filtered through Chloe's version of reality. It was mine, raw, unpolished, and finally real. An hour later, Dana called. Her voice was calm but concerned. "Emma, thank you for verifying those details. I've cross-checked everything in our system, and I'm afraid you're right." The words hit like lightning, bright, sharp, final. "Chloe Wilson submitted your paperwork with her photo, using your documents. We assumed she was you. It looks like she altered the contact information and forged your signature on the acceptance form." My stomach turned. "So, she's working there right now?" "Yes," Dana said softly. "She's listed as Emma Wilson in our HR database. But that will be corrected immediately. I'll escalate this to our legal department. In the meantime, could you please forward any additional evidence you have? I promised I would. After the call ended, I sat back, stunned. My fingers trembled, but it wasn't weakness this time. It was rage, pure and focused. All those nights she'd told me to be patient. All those times she'd smiled while I cried. I opened a blank document titled Statement of Truth. I listed every interaction, every date, every text. Line by line, I built my case like a wall she couldn't climb. Later that day, I received another email.
Emma,
We appreciate your honesty. We'll handle this internally. You're officially reinstated for the position, starting next Monday. Please disregard all previous communication made through your sister. I froze. Then I laughed, the kind of laugh that comes out half sob, half victory scream. It didn't feel real yet, but I had proof in writing. I forwarded the message to my personal email and to one other person, Mrs. Callahan, my neighbor. She'd always said, sunlight kills secrets. I wanted someone to hold the light with me. That evening, Chloe showed up at my door. No call, no warning. Just her. Hair perfect, face tight, eyes desperate. Emma, we need to talk. I stepped aside.
sure.
Come in. She entered like she owned the place. Look, I don't know what you told HR, but you're making a huge mistake. You don't understand how corporate stuff works. Oh, I understand perfectly, I interrupted. You use my name, my documents, my future. That's not corporate stuff, Chloe. That's fraud. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I was helping you, she snapped. They wanted someone with confidence. I was just going to get in first, make an impression, and then what? I cut in. Tell them later that your helpless sister deserved the job you stole? Her eyes flashed. You've always been jealous of me. No, I said quietly. I've always been too forgiving. She froze. The silence between us stretched thin as glass. Then she hissed, You'll regret this. Maybe, I said. But at least I won't regret who I am. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. For a long moment, I just stood there, breathing. Then Hazel peeked out from her room, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Mommy, she asked sleepily. Was that Auntie Chloe? I smiled softly. Not anymore, sweetheart. That night, I tucked Hazel in, turned off the lights, and stood by the window again. The same window where I'd once felt helpless. Now it felt like standing at the edge of freedom. Because for the first time in years, I didn't owe anyone my silence. It didn't take long for everything to unravel. 2 days later, I was sitting in the HR office at Windcrest Marketing, the same company Chloe had been working at, under my name. The office felt both familiar and foreign, all glass walls and muted chatter. I had dressed in my best navy blouse, the one I'd once worn to interviews that went nowhere. Dana, the HR manager, greeted me with a calm smile. Emma, thank you for coming in. We'll need you to sign a few forms to correct the records. Legal is handling the rest. She paused, lowering her voice. Your sister has been suspended pending investigation. The words landed heavily. Outside the office, I could see Chloe sitting at a nearby desk, flanked by 2 supervisors. Her face was pale, eyes darting between them and me. For a split second, our eyes met through the glass wall. I thought she might look sorry, but she didn't. Her jaw tightened. She mouthed something that looked like, You did this. I looked away. Dana gestured to the paperwork. Once you sign these, you're officially reinstated as the new account coordinator. Starting salary, same as the offer you were sent originally. My hand trembled slightly as I signed. Each pen stroke felt like cutting another thread between us. The HR doors opened. Chloe's voice rose, sharp, desperate. You can't just fire me. I've been doing this job for months. I earned this. Ma'am, one of the supervisors said evenly, you obtained employment under false pretenses. You think she's better than me? Chloe shouted, pointing at me. She can't even take care of herself. I did her a favor. The entire office had gone quiet. Phones stopped ringing. Typing ceased. Every head turned. Dana stepped in front of me. That's enough. Chloe's gaze snapped toward me, red-eyed, trembling. You always play the victim, Emma. You always make people pity you. I took a slow breath. My voice was steady when I finally spoke. No, Chloe. You made sure I stayed small because my light scared you. But I'm not playing the victim anymore. Her lips quivered, but she didn't speak again. 2 security officers appeared at the door. She jerked her arm away when they gently asked her to leave. Don't touch me, she cried out, tears spilling now. You'll regret this, Emma. You'll regret it. But I didn't. As the door shut behind her, the silence that followed was absolute. Dana exhaled slowly, then turned to me. You handled that with more grace than most people would have. I nodded, voice barely above a whisper. I've had practice. That evening, when I came home, Hazel was at Mrs. Callahan's. The little house felt different, lighter somehow. I turned on the lamp and noticed the framed photo of Chloe and me on the bookshelf. It had been taken years ago, both of us laughing, arms around each other. I took the photo down, not out of anger but acceptance. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Emma? This is Detective Reynolds from the city's fraud division. We received a complaint from Windcrest Marketing regarding an identity case involving your name. We'd like you to come in tomorrow to provide a formal statement. I swallowed. Of course. I'll be there. He thanked me and hung up. The call left me strangely calm. There was no panic, no second-guessing, only relief that the truth was finally being seen. Later, Hazel came home, clutching a crayon drawing. Look, Mommy, she said. It's us. You and me. And this is our new house. I smiled at the picture, just 2 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. It's beautiful, I told her. And, you know what? That's exactly what it feels like. Before bed, I sat by her door, watching her sleep. There was still a part of me that grieved, not just for the sister I lost, but for the version of me that thought family meant always forgiving. But that version was gone now. When the knock came the next morning, it wasn't the police or a neighbor. It was Chloe. Her hair was unkempt, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped. I just wanted to say, she began, voice breaking, you ruined my life. I stood in the doorway, calm. No, Chloe. You ruined it when you decided mine didn't matter. She said nothing, just turned and walked away, down the cracked sidewalk into the fog. And as her figure disappeared, I felt something inside me unclench. It wasn't victory. It was release. For the first time in years, I didn't need her to understand. I only needed to be free. The next few weeks passed like a slow sunrise. Every day at Windcrest felt both strange and miraculous, like I was stepping into a version of my life that had been waiting patiently for me to claim it. Dana, my HR manager, became more than just a colleague. She became an unexpected ally. One morning, as we poured coffee in the break room, she said quietly, You know, Emma, it takes guts to face something like that and still show up with kindness. I smiled softly. Kindness isn't weakness. It's survival. She nodded. That's exactly why I wanted you here. At my desk, there were still traces of Chloe's months there. A plant she'd bought, a mug that said Boss Energy. I left them untouched. Not out of sentimentality, but as a quiet reminder that even stolen beginnings can grow into honest ones. At home, Mrs. Callahan showed up one Saturday morning with a loaf of banana bread and a handwritten note. You've got a new start, honey. Don't look back. The world has more good people than bad ones. Sometimes they just live next door. I stuck that note on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. Hazel, meanwhile, seemed lighter. She laughed more, slept through the night. She'd stopped asking when Aunt Chloe would visit. Instead, she asked about my job. Do you like your office, Mommy? I do, I told her one evening, as we painted together at the kitchen table. You know why? She shook her head, dipping her brush in blue paint. Because it's mine. I earned it. I worked for it. And now I get to make it beautiful. She smiled proudly, holding up her painting, 2 hearts, one big and one small, connected by a rainbow. At work, the community began to reveal itself. People I'd never met before started offering small gestures, a coffee waiting on my desk, a post-it note with a doodle, a warm smile in the hallway. The office gossip eventually faded, replaced by quiet respect. And one day, near closing time, my coworker Mason stopped by my desk. He was tall, soft-spoken, with a kind of patience that made silence feel safe. "You're staying late again," he said. I chuckled. "Old habit. Trying to prove I belong here, I guess." He smiled. "Emma, you don't have to prove anything. You already do." Something about that line stuck with me all evening. When I got home, I made pasta for dinner. The kitchen smelled like garlic and butter, the kind of smell that makes a house feel alive again. Hazel helped sprinkle cheese on top, grinning as she accidentally spilled too much. For the first time in years, the table didn't feel like a place for apologies. It felt like a place for gratitude. After dinner, we curled up on the couch and watched the same animated movie we'd watched 100 times before. Halfway through, Hazel rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Mommy, I'm proud of you." The tears came quietly. Not from pain, but from release. Sunday mornings became my favorite. The city was quiet, the world soft. I'd sit by the window with coffee and make lists, not of bills or problems, but of small victories. I paid rent early. Hazel's art hung in her classroom. I finally slept through the night. Didn't flinch when Chloe's name came up in conversation. Healing wasn't a single moment. It was hundreds of tiny ones, stitched together by courage and quiet consistency. One evening, Mrs. Callahan came over again, carrying a grocery bag. "Thought you could use these," she said, setting down some vegetables, a carton of milk, and a new photo frame. "Mrs. C, you don't have to keep doing this," I said with a smile. "Oh, I know," she replied, winking. "That's why it's nice. It's not about having to, it's about wanting to." Her words sank deep. After she left, I placed the new frame on the shelf where the photo of Chloe and me had once been. This time, I filled it with something new, Hazel and me at the park, her hair flying in the wind, both of us laughing. For the first time in forever, the space didn't feel empty. It felt open. And when I looked around, I realized something simple but profound. For once, the house felt bigger. A few months later, life had a rhythm again. Not the frantic, anxious rhythm I'd lived by before, but something softer, steadier. Mornings began with sunlight spilling across the kitchen floor. Hazel and I danced to old pop songs while making pancakes, our laughter echoing against the quiet hum of the fridge. At work, I had grown into my new role. I wasn't just the replacement anymore, I was part of the heartbeat of Windcrest. I handled client pitches, mentored interns, and, to my surprise, started getting recognized for ideas that used to be dismissed when Chloe spoke over me. The first time my boss said, "That's a great call, Emma," I almost didn't know how to respond. I'd spent so long being invisible that acknowledgement felt foreign. But I smiled and said, "Thank you." It was enough. Every Friday, Mason and I would grab lunch at the park across the street. It started as casual, co-workers decompressing after a long week, but somewhere along the way, the conversations deepened. He'd talk about his younger sister studying art in Seattle, and I'd talk about Hazel's drawings taped all over the apartment. "You've got a calm energy," he told me once, stirring his coffee. "You make chaos feel manageable." I laughed softly. "That's because I've lived through enough of it." He smiled. "Maybe that's what makes you strong." His kindness wasn't grand or loud. It was patient, the kind that never asked for pieces of me I wasn't ready to give. Meanwhile, Chloe tried to reach out again. The first message came through a mutual cousin. She says she's sorry. She's in therapy. She wants to talk. I read it twice. My hands didn't shake. I replied simply, "I wish her peace. But I'm not ready to open that door." There was no anger left, just clarity. Forgiveness, I'd learned, doesn't always mean reconnection. Sometimes it's closing the chapter without tearing out the pages. Hazel thrived in kindergarten. Her teacher told me she was the class helper, always the first to comfort anyone who fell or cried. "She's got her mom's heart," Mrs. Callahan said when I told her. That night, I caught Hazel humming to herself while coloring at the table. She looked up and said, "Mommy, I'm happy we don't have to be sad anymore." My throat tightened. "Me too, baby," I whispered. "Me too." On weekends, I started doing things I'd forgotten I loved. Painting, gardening, sitting at the park bench near the lake, watching families play. One afternoon, Hazel and I planted tulips in the tiny garden outside our apartment building. The soil was dry at first, stubborn, but we worked it loose together. "Do you think they'll grow?" she asked. "They will," I said. "Good things take time, but they always find the sun." When we finished, she placed a tiny wooden stick beside one of the bulbs. In her wobbly handwriting, it read, "Our new start." I didn't correct her spelling. It was perfect just as it was. At work, things continued to bloom too. My first major campaign launched successfully, and Dana called me into her office one morning. "Emma, how would you feel about leading a small team next quarter?" she asked. I blinked. "Me?" She smiled. "You've earned it." On my walk home that evening, the city lights shimmered against the pavement after a light rain. I stopped for a moment and looked up. The world didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt wide open. Later that night, I tucked Hazel into bed and sat by the window with my journal. I wrote one simple line across the page. Peace isn't what happens when everything's fixed. It's what happens when you stop needing permission to be yourself. As I set the pen down, I realized something else. For the first time in forever, my life didn't revolve around what had been taken from me, but around what I was building. And this time, every piece of it was mine. A year later, everything looked different. Yet somehow, it finally felt like home. The morning light poured through the kitchen window, soft and golden, bouncing off the pale blue walls Hazel and I had painted ourselves. The air smelled like pancakes and cinnamon, her favorite breakfast. It was my first anniversary at Windcrest, and my first year of peace. I stood at the counter, flipping pancakes, while Hazel set the table, this time not in the small cramped apartment we used to rent, but in a cozy two-bedroom home with a little fenced yard. It wasn't big, but it was ours. She hummed while placing forks and napkins neatly. "Mommy, do you think Grandma and Grandpa will come to my birthday this year?" I paused, smiling gently. "Maybe. If they do, it'll be because they want to, not because they have to." She nodded, satisfied with that answer. Later, as she played in the yard, I took a moment to myself. I opened the small journal I'd started months ago, the one where I wrote reflections, lessons, fragments of the person I was becoming. On the first page, I'd written, "You can't build peace on secrets." On the newest page, I added, "You can rebuild after betrayal and still love without fear." The difference between those two sentences told the whole story. That afternoon, I went back to Windcrest for the company's summer luncheon. The office buzzed with laughter and music. People I once thought barely noticed me now waved me over to join them. Dana raised a toast to Emma for reminding us that integrity is more powerful than ambition. The room cheered, and I felt heat rise in my chest, not embarrassment, but pride. Mason caught my eye from across the room, smiling in quiet support. When the event ended, he walked me to my car. "You know," he said softly, "a year ago, you walked into that office like you were afraid to breathe too loud. Now you walk like you belong." I smiled. "That's because I finally do." On the drive home, the city's skyline glowed in the evening light. I thought of Chloe then, not with anger, not even with sadness, but with understanding. I hadn't heard from her since she moved out of state. Someone told me she was working again, trying to start over. I hoped she found help. I hoped she found peace. Because I finally had mine. That night, Hazel and I sat on the porch, the air warm and filled with the hum of crickets. She rested her head on my shoulder and said, "Mommy, you look happy." I kissed the top of her head. "I am, sweetheart. Are we going to stay here forever?" I smiled. "Maybe not forever, but long enough to make beautiful memories." She grinned. "Then that's forever to me." The porch light flickered softly. Somewhere inside, a clock ticked, not a countdown anymore, but a heartbeat. I closed my eyes, breathing in the calm, the safety, The enoughness of it all. When I opened them again, I whispered the single word that had once felt so far away. Home.